Joining me now, the chairman of the House Select Committee on China, Wisconsin representative and former Marine serving 2 tours in Iraq, Mike Gallagher. Congressman, happy Easter, and thanks for joining me on Sunday Morning Futures.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Sean.
Yeah, it looks like you have a beautiful Wisconsin background there. So, Congressman, I want to dive into what happened in the meeting with Taiwan. You were there with Speaker McCarthy, and you now have seen a retaliation from the Chinese with their live fire act around Taiwan, but also you've seen China come out with a statement from their LA consulate where they said that their common enemy, they're going to be more resolute in fighting, that common enemy being the United States of America.
Well, Sean, clearly the Chinese Communist Party is trying to intimidate us. They're trying to bully us. They're massive bullies on the world stage. They would like to reunify Taiwan with the mainland by force if necessary. Xi Jinping keeps saying this, and a lot of people in the elite Wall Street world, in the elite big tech world, in the elite Hollywood world keep discounting it despite the fact that he keeps saying it. But of course, Xi Jinping would love to achieve that reunification without force if possible. And the way to do that is through psychological warfare. It's through economic coercion. It's through political warfare. And that's really what President Tsai of Taiwan has been warning us about. It's what she calls cognitive warfare. So it's important for the American people not to be intimidated. And the fact that the Chinese were throwing a temper tantrum about the Speaker of the House meeting with the democratically elected leader of Taiwan on American soil just shows you how sensitive they are. We need not to back down. We need to stand up for freedom, and we need to support our friends in Taiwan, specifically by giving them the weapons that they've purchased from us, which have been backlogged. We have a $19 billion backlog of weapons. That's unacceptable, Sean. We need to be moving heaven and earth to surge power out to the Indo-Pacific before it's too late, before we have another war on our hands.
Well, what more can be done, Congressman, to make sure those weapons actually do get to Taiwan so they can defend themselves should China attack?
I think if you look at the $19 billion, there's many different items involved in that. I think the Harpoon anti-ship missiles are the most important. I remain convinced that there's more we can do to move Taiwan to the front of the line ahead of Saudi Arabia, for example, when it comes to Harpoon deliveries, as well as take the Harpoon missiles that we're putting into deep storage, that we're demilling, and change around a few aspects of them so that we can deliver them to Taiwan. We could also explore licensing certain weapon systems so the Taiwanese could produce them domestically, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to energy and focus and prioritization from the executive branch. We need the Secretary of Defense himself to get involved to make this a daily priority for the backlog to get cleared, and I've seen no evidence of that from the Biden administration thus far.
I want to go back to the Taiwan meeting because China trying to use our laws and our norms to protest. They were paying $400 per protester to go to the Ronald Reagan Ranch and bust up your meeting, try to show that people were organically opposed to you all meeting with the Taiwan president.
Yeah, this is a perfect microcosm of the way the Chinese Communist Party operates through something called United Front work. They basically bribe people on American soil to do their bidding. We've seen this in industry after industry. We've seen this in higher education. We've seen it in Wall Street. We've seen it in a variety of domestic institutions that have been corrupted by the Chinese Communist Party and by economic incentives. So in many cases, we've become addicted to access to the Chinese market. And so luckily, those protesters didn't disrupt the actual event. The event was a very positive one. It was a bipartisan event. We had legislators on both sides of the aisle. Speaker McCarthy did a fantastic job standing up to CCP coercion. And again, it gets back to the basic point. We can't allow ourselves to be intimidated by these United Front work tactics. It's not going to work here in America. That's the message we need to send. The other thing, Sean, is further evidence that this isn't just an over there threat. This is a right here at home threat.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, let's pivot. I want to talk about Afghanistan because John Kirby this week came out and said the withdrawal from Afghanistan, it wasn't chaotic. Watch this.
So I'm sorry, I just won't buy the whole argument of chaos.
Mike Gallagher, mosaic.
I'm almost speechless, Sean. I mean, that I don't know what universe Kirby is living in. I mean, it was the definition of chaos. It was dishonorable. It was shameful. It was humiliating. And Kirby, as a military officer, should know better. We're talking about 13 Americans dead who didn't need to die, Sean. Hundreds of Americans that we abandoned behind enemy lines. And for them to minimize this, for them to try and just dump this report on a Thursday night, hoping nobody would notice. And then if you read the contents of the report, it's quite literally insane, Sean. Trying to gaslight the American people. I cannot fathom just their willingness to do this. And look at what happened on the world stage after our shameful surrender in Afghanistan. Well, Vladimir Putin took one look at that and decided, you know, America looks really weak right now. I'm going to invade Ukraine. And for them to brag about the success of our effort in Ukraine ignores the simple fact that deterrence failed in Ukraine. And even in the best case scenario, tens of thousands of people are going to die, hundreds of thousands of people are going to be displaced, and hundreds of billions of dollars are going to be lost because deterrence failures are costly. And as the old saying goes, Sean, war is hell. This is nothing to brag about. This is just complete shameful lies from the White House that we're seeing on Afghanistan.
And in the report that you mentioned, the Biden administration doesn't take responsibility themselves. They blame you-know-who. It was Donald Trump's fault. Well, I had Kash Patel, who was at the DOD at the time, on our show on Fox Business, and he said, listen, the Biden administration didn't follow any of our plans that we had as we did the transition in January from the Trump to the Biden administration. They basically ripped them up. They didn't do anything that we said. And by the way, they also gave up Bagram Air Base when we said we should actually keep it.
Yet Trump was, in fact, not the president on February 20, at the time of the Afghanistan surrender, so I don't know what they're talking about. And, of course, Trump did not box them into abandoning Bagram, which was a massive mistake. So this blaming of Trump, this passing of the buck to the previous administration, we've seen it time and time again. And here's why I think this is very important, Sean. It's not just a matter of the blame game. It's a matter of learning the right lessons from the failure of deterrence in Ukraine so that we don't repeat those same mistakes in Asia, across the Taiwan Strait. We need to understand why deterrence fails so that deterrence can hold in Taiwan, so we don't find ourselves fighting a kinetic war with the Chinese Communist Party, which is far more powerful than Russia right now. Russia is merely Xi Jinping's junior partner in a new Cold War that they've launched against the West. And so if we refuse to learn these lessons, we're doomed to repeat them in a far more difficult military environment across the Taiwan Strait.
Mike, I want to pivot with you to Wisconsin, a place that we both love and care about. You're there right now. The Supreme Court race in Wisconsin was won by the liberals. It's going to change the control of the court from conservative now to liberal. Wisconsin matters not just to us, but to America because it is a swing state. What impact is this election and this switch of the court going to have on Wisconsin?
It's a massive loss, Sean. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. We need to recognize that. We need to figure out how we do better going forward. I mean, we're talking about a liberal state Supreme Court that can now overturn all the things that Wisconsin conservatives have fought so hard for. All the reforms of the Walker era. I mean, we're talking about Act 10. We're talking about redistricting. I mean, this is a very concerning situation. So how do we lose, Sean? We need to figure that out. We're getting outraised by the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. We need to figure that out. We obviously missed an opportunity to do common sense election integrity reform because we lost the governor's race in the last election. And honestly, we need to figure out how to get our people to vote through early voting, through absentee voting. I know that makes a lot of conservatives mad, but that's what the Democrats are doing right now. And until such a day as we reform our election system in Wisconsin, we have to get more votes than the Democrats do. So this is a time for short soul searching because we also need to take action so we don't continue to lose statewide elections.
Yeah, we're going to lose voter ID in Wisconsin, and the issue of abortion will also be affected. So is your point, this is not that Wisconsin is turning more blue, it's that just Republicans didn't execute, didn't raise enough money, maybe didn't have the best candidate, weren't right on the issues?
Who knows if the other candidate in the primary would have won? I mean, the most obvious things I see are the money and the ground game. And we need to do better on both accounts. I mean, it's not just abortion laws in Wisconsin. We're talking about control of the White House going forward. Obviously, Wisconsin's going to be a pivotal state for the 2024 presidential election. So we need to get our act together so that we can put this in the win column going into 2024. And obviously, every issue is on the line in the 2024 presidential race. So now is the time for for conservatives, not just in Wisconsin, but nationally, to unite behind a coherent plan to make sure that we are ready to fight come Election Day 2024.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, happy Easter to you and your family. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Happy Easter. God bless, Sean.